Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Game-Based Learning in the World Language Classroom. The why, the what, and the how. We're still solidly in the why section, and we are still talking about Hattie effect sizes. I'm Madame Sensei. I've written several books. I can be reached at studio-nemo.com, the Minecraft Education Ambassadors, or the Minecraft Teachers Lounge, or the Duolingo Educators Network. And again, we're talking about the Hattie effect sizes, just the top most important things that you can do and how game-based learning is going to help you get there. So we're on prior ability now. This has a Hattie effect size of 0.94. Prior ability is so easy because many of the games you choose are going to be games that the students already know or that they have a certain amount of confidence already in. Hey, I've played Clue before. I've got my strategies. I know how to do this. I can dominate this game. And also, you're going to introduce the game at a certain point of instructional time when the students are really ready to start applying the skill. And of course, you're going to ladder the games, or maybe the complexity of the games, so the students are always building on what they know. So I'm going to get into this in depth in an entire chapter of my book, and I'll do however many videos I need to do to cover it. But this prior ability, you're going to be building on everything you do. Strategy to integrate with prior knowledge has the Hattie effect size of 0.93. So again, using your superpowers as a fabulous educator, you'll have thought about how to ladder the games. That means to make the game more complicated as the days go on so that you're always building on stuff. The students keep growing with their foundation becoming larger and larger. Examples of games that I've successfully nested to integrate with prior knowledge, Clue, we just saw in the previous thing, and Apples to Apples, I'm going to explain in depth also. So if you take this effect size from a different angle, you can also make any of the standard go-tos into a game. So like Hattie talks about hot potato, that sounds an awful lot like Harvard Project Zero Thinking Routine +1, which I talked about in the Harvard Project Zero Thinking Routines playlist. Learning grids sounds an awful lot like GLAD process grids. I talked about GLAD process grids in the GLAD Guided Language Acquisition Development playlist, and I'll go into them in more depth here too. So let's look at some of the strategies that Hattie talks about and some ways to gamify the strategies. Now, gamify just means you use the trappings of a game to do the activity. It's not a game in and of itself. And I'm going to talk in chapter 4 of my book, whenever we get there in the video series, specifically about the difference between game-based learning and gamification. And then I'll also talk in depth about how to gamify your classroom. All right, so the first one Hattie gives us is the concept star. Basically, just an easy way to gamify it. Designate each point of the star, numbers 1 through 5, and have the students roll a dice, okay? Number 1, change the verb. Number 2, change the subject. Number 3, and then number 6 could be your wild card. It could be a special question, or you could, of course, draw a 6-pointed star to begin with. The next one, Hattie talks about her Venn diagrams in graphic organizers, okay? So you can draw a Venn diagram on the board, or you know what, I teach 3 languages, and I don't have much, I don't want to draw it on the board necessarily, so I'll draw it on butcher paper and then hang up the butcher paper, tape it to the wall or whatever, and then have the students throw something at it, and if they hit where they intended to go, then they get to come up and write what they wanted to write in the part of the Venn diagram. Structured overview. This is still part of graphic organizers. Well, instead of having the students write immediately, you're losing your think time, you know? Put the students in pairs and give them words that you've already printed on cardstock, or here I just had index cards. Let the students organize the words into a hierarchy themselves. You can tell them it's a race if you'd like. When they're done manipulating the words on cardstock, then they can copy it onto paper. And then you can also do a gallery walk to see how other people arrange their words. It gets the students to think more deeply about it. Mind maps. Well, this feels like a game if you just plop a big piece of butcher paper on every table group with a box of markers and set a timer. Maybe give points, game points for how many vocabulary words you came up with. Concept maps. I love this. Okay. You could do it as a bingo game and have the students color in the square when you introduce it or when the student feels like they've mastered it and are ready to prove it. Or I like to do a game board, and Duolingo helped me create this one. And I just have my students basically move themselves along the path as they learn the material and as they feel like they've conquered it. And they have to answer diagnostic questions or metacognitive questions as they go along. It shows me that they know. Shows them that they know. You know when I started doing this? I started doing this many years ago when my oldest son was in school, and he one day told me that guitar was his favorite class. And I was like, oh, that's great. Why is guitar your favorite class? And he said, well, because I can tell I'm getting better at it. I have no idea if I'm getting better in math, but I can tell I'm getting better at guitar. And at that point, I started thinking, how can I show my students that they're getting better? And I think walking linearly down a path is going to help them see that. A KWL chart. This is what I know, what I wonder, what I learned. This is very similar to the inquiry chart in the GLAD technique, which has two columns, what we know about and what we want to learn about. It's also very similar to the Harvard Project Zero thinking routine, Think, Puzzle, Explore, which I talked about both the GLAD and Harvard Project Zero in other playlists, but I'll do it again here. Think, Puzzle, Explore has what do you think you know? What questions or puzzles do you have? How might you explore the puzzles? This is really easy to gamify by doing a +1 routine, which is one of my favorite Harvard Project Zero thinking routines, which basically write as much in column 1 as you can. When I call time, pass your paper 1 to the left. Now read over what they have, what they wrote, and add 1. Or you can roll dice. Rolling dice adds this wonderful randomization to things. There's a game of 6s, which I'll teach you how to play coming up. Or, if you're using the word puzzle, why not make it a puzzle? Take it literally. Have the students try to represent their puzzles with either a logic puzzle or a word puzzle or drawing what they were thinking about and then have them cut it up and reassemble it. There's just so many ways to gamify this. Anticipatory guides. These are kind of fun. Write 5 or 6 yes/no questions about the text before the class reads it, or sometimes I do it like right before we get to the climax of something. So designate a wall or a corner of your room as yes or no or sort of or not really in the target language. So I had my class, I labeled it oui, non, and peut-être, and we were reading Tintin, okay? And then all the students had to get up to their feet, and they voted when I read off each question by going to one of the 4 walls of the room, or the 4 corners of the room, okay? So I had these, like, Tonton's gonna die, so they got to vote on that, of course, The 2 Dupont, the 2 detectives are gonna save Tonton, so a lot of them didn't predict that correctly, which was great. Tonton has to find 4 treasure maps, and at this point, the students were getting pretty good at knowing that there were 3, so that was fine. Milou, the dog, is going to fight a cat. Oh, everyone thought Milou was going to fight a cat. No, Milou doesn't fight a cat. And then this one, this cracked them up. It took them a while to, they read it and then they were just laughing. But that was, the treasure is the friends that we met along the way. Another thing you could do is play Blob. I also like to play Blob if I don't want to write on my whiteboards or whatever. Blob is you ask a question, and then you have the students go find someone who agrees with them. Okay, maybe they think the 2 detectives are going to save Tom Tom. Okay, so you both agree. All right, so go find another 2 people because you're stuck together now. Find 2 more people who either agree with you or you have to convince them. And then find now 4 more people because everyone gets stuck together. So you turn into this big blob as you go around the room. And sometimes we have 2 factions that never see eye to eye, but generally people can convince each other by the end of the game. That's pretty fun. Hot Potato is very similar to Project Zero Thinking Routine +1, which I really love, except in Hot Potato, each student has a paper with a different topic on it. So to make it more game-like, you just set a timer, you award game points for how much the groups have filled up their papers. But I do love the +1 thinking routine, and I'll talk about it a lot. Finding out tables. Well, pretend it's gotta catch 'em all. Make sure your students talk to everyone in class. Have your students change their statements into questions as they go talking to everyone. Learning grids can be handled like bingo cards. Brainstorming. Quirky ideas are the ones that are celebrated. So challenge the groups to come up with the weirdest ideas and then do this round robin style elimination. That's always fun. In our next episode, more Hattie effect sizes. Trying to keep these videos to 10 minutes. Hope to see you there.